In this video, I hope to provide another illustration of applying the principles of logic to a question in ethics. In this case, the question is whether evolutionary theory is relevant to morality. This claim's a bit vague. Perhaps it means that evolution created a human brain that's capable of thinking about and acting on moral reasons. This thesis is true, but it's trivially true. We know that humans are disposed to think about and act on moral reasons, and that this capacity is consistent with evolution, just as we know that human beings have hearts and that our having a heart is compatible with evolution. Another possible meaning is that the reason some things are right or wrong, good or evil, virtuous or vicious, is because we've evolved to have a sentiment of approval or disapproval. This thesis would be significant if it were true, but it's not true. The tendency to think that the study of evolution can give us moral facts is a common mistake. The philosopher Peter Singer wrote about this practice, quote, "No matter how often the fallacy of reading a moral direction into evolution has been pointed out, people still commit it. And it is not difficult to find otherwise excellent contemporary writers in evolutionary theory who continue to make this mistake. Nevertheless, it is a mistake." Unquote. The thesis that we're going to be looking at is this one. What is just, or right, or good is what we have evolved a disposition to approve of. And what is unjust, or wrong, or bad is what we have evolved a disposition to disapprove of. The idea is that this reason we judge some behaviors to be right or wrong, fair or unfair, and the like, is because our biological ancestors acquired some sort of genetic disposition to approve of or disapprove of these types of interactions, and that this promoted their genetic fitness. Take, for example, a phenomena that's called reciprocal altruism, the notion that if you pick the lice off of my back, I'll pick the lice off of yours. An evolved disposition to help others and receive help in return, as well as the capacity to recognize and to punish, or at least refuse to deal with cheaters, is thought to be evolutionarily useful. This is thought to explain how we acquired a disposition to approve of reciprocal behaviors and to condemn cheaters. It is sometimes argued that because evolution can explain our moral dispositions, we don't need God to explain those dispositions. Morality is in our genes. I think we can dismiss this idea quickly. Not that God is required for morality, but evolution certainly can't explain morality. Clearly, the following position is absurd. The position states that religion can have no role to play in reducing somebody's tendency to commit murder, abuse, or rape, lying, stealing, and engaging in practices such as slavery and genocide. Instead, our disposition not to engage in these types of behaviors can be fully explained in terms of evolution. Since evolution regulates our behavior and makes us cooperative, appealing to the possibility of punishment in an afterlife serves no useful purpose. That position is absurd on its face. Our evolved dispositions have not prevented these things, and if somebody wants to suggest an alternative to religion and threats of divine punishment to prevent these behaviors, history shows that we can't expect evolved dispositions to do the work. Interestingly, the evolution thesis falls victim to the same types of argument that Plato, speaking through Socrates, applied to religious ethics. When Socrates was presented with the thesis that what is just is that which is loved by the gods, Socrates answered with a question. Is it just because it is approved of by the gods, or is it loved by the gods because it is just? The first option was rejected because it would make anything just if only God would approve of it. The murder of children, for example, or slavery or genocide, God could approve of any of these things and thereby make them just. And we couldn't say that God would never approve of these things because they're wrong. Under the first interpretation, they're not wrong until God disapproves of them. So we can reject the first interpretation. The second option wasn't actually rejected, but it was shown to be incapable of telling us what makes some things right and other things wrong. If it's not God's approval or disapproval, then what is it? Along similar lines, we can ask, is something just because we have evolved a disposition to approve of it, or have we evolved a disposition to approve of it because it is just? Let's consider the first option. Something is just because we have evolved a disposition to approve of it. In other words, what makes something just or unjust is the fact that we have evolved dispositions of approval or disapproval. This means that if we take something like, well, lions seem to have evolved a disposition of killing their stepchildren. When a pair of young males drives a pair of older males away from a tribe and take over the tribe, they tend to kill the young cubs in the tribe. They then mate with the females and have their own children. This prevents them from wasting evolutionary energy raising somebody else's children. Humans could have evolved a disposition very much like this. If the thesis that what makes something right is that we have evolved a disposition to approve of it is true, then it follows that if we were to evolve a disposition to approve of killing our stepchildren, then it would become morally permissible, perhaps even morally obligatory, to kill our stepchildren. Interestingly, we can't say with certainty that some humans haven't acquired this disposition. Every genetic trait that appears in nature appeared first in a single individual. It helped that individual survive and reproduce, and over time, spread through the whole population. The first examples of the disposition to approve of killing one's stepchildren, killing other males and taking their woman and property, or killing and eating one's mate after sex, might just now be appearing in a few members of our species. But it's absurd to argue that these possibilities imply that it could be the case that these behaviors will become moral. Since this interpretation of the original thesis leads to such an absurd conclusion, we can reject that interpretation. This leaves us with the second option. We have evolved a disposition to approve of something because it is just. The problem with this option is that it's just not how evolution works. Scientists have come up with a great many models and theories to explain how a new trait can spread within a population. Nowhere in their theories is there a variable for the justness of this disposition. These variables simply are not a part of evolutionary theory. So this option leads to a false conclusion. So now, once again, briefly, there are two possible ways to link morality to evolved disposition. We have the option that says that if we have evolved a disposition to approve of something, then it's just. This option leads to the absurdity that, under the right circumstances, rape, killing one's stepchildren, killing the males in a competing tribe and taking their females, or killing and eating your mate after sex could all become morally legitimate, maybe even morally obligatory activities. All of these dispositions have appeared in nature. The other option says that the fact that something is just explains why we have evolved a disposition to approve of it. But this is simply false. The justness of an activity has no place in evolutionary theory. With both options being rejected, we have reason to reject the original proposal. Whatever it is that makes some things just and other things unjust, evolution does not explain it. Whatever makes some things right and other things wrong is something outside of and independent of evolution. As Peter Singer said, no matter how often the fallacy of reading a moral direction into evolution has been pointed out, people still commit it. And it's not difficult to find otherwise excellent contemporary writers in evolutionary theory who continue to make this mistake. Nevertheless, it is a mistake.